Patriot wave is coming. NATO air defense systems, billions in military support and a powerful new alliance, all promised for Ukraine as Trump and NATO double down. Battlefield robots are now fighting alongside our troops, delivering ammo, rescuing their wounded and changing the game under fire. Ukraine arms chemical plant launched in Kyiv. This joint effort will tackle the storage of key components of armor production. As Russia upgrades its UAVs, Ukraine hits back with deadly new interceptors in the sky. This is Ukraine Today. I'm Zarislava Kolesnikova and I'm here to break it all down. Stay with us. 17 Patriot system, billions in weapons, fresh sanctions on Russia. After a major meeting with NATO's new chief Mark Rutte, President Donald Trump confirmed the biggest deal yet to arm Ukraine. Rutte says a massive delivery of military hardware is coming fast and NATO will coordinate every step. Is this the turning point in Ukraine air defense? Full breakdown right now.
NATO and the US have reached an agreement on supplying Ukraine with weapons worth billions of dollars. This was announced by US President Donald Trump at the White House during a meeting with the alliance's Secretary General Mark Rutte. Trump confirmed that new equipment will be manufactured for NATO and made available for further delivery to Ukraine. A key point was the US authorization to send Patriot air defense systems to Kyiv. Trump noted that NATO member countries that have these systems will be able to transfer them to Ukraine and, in return, receive new systems from the United States. The head of the White House announced preparations to supply 17 Patriot systems to Ukraine, which will begin arriving in the near future.
Some of them will arrive here very soon. In fact, within a few days. Several countries that have Patriot systems will exchange them, and we will replace the Patriots they have, while Matt will coordinate actions with NATO. But in any case, they will start arriving soon.
The details of the agreement between the US and NATO were announced by the alliance's Secretary General Mark Rutte. Under the arms supply agreement, Ukraine may receive a large number of air defense systems, missiles and ammunition. According to him, this is the success of the NATO summit, where alliance countries agreed to increase defense industrial production, defense spending by 5%, as well as aid to Ukraine. He emphasized that this is only the first wave. There will be more to come. That's why we will walk through NATO systems to make sure we know what Ukraine needs so that we can put together aid packages. Of course, this is the way we discussed it with Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon. This way, we will preserve the reserves we need to defend this country. That is absolutely clear. But this will mean that Ukraine can get its hands on a truly massive amount of air defense weaponry, as well as missiles, ammunition, and so on. The large-scale deliveries of Patriot systems exceed the previously stated request for these complexes by Volodymyr Zelensky. The president of Ukraine stated that Ukraine's request is for 10 additional Patriot systems and missiles for them. With each passing day, the issue of protecting Ukrainian airspace is becoming increasingly urgent. Russia is using a large number of attack drones for strikes against Ukraine. Some experts suggest that the aggressor country could launch up to 1,000 UAVs per day. Analysts are convinced that strengthening Ukraine's airspace by its partners is a significant signal to Putin, one that the White House should have sent immediately after Donald Trump's inauguration.
The signal to Putin should consist of two parts. The first part is increasing military aid and support for Ukraine. And the second part is strengthening sanctions against Russia. And Putin does not understand, nor will he ever understand, any other kind of signal.
Let us recall that earlier, the United Kingdom and Ukraine signed a historic multi-million-dollar agreement for the supply of missiles for air defense systems. The munitions will be supplied by Thales, a company based in Belfast. It is expected that the UK will supply Ukraine with about 5,000 air defense missiles. The United Kingdom has also confirmed bilateral assistance to Ukraine for the 2025-2026 financial year in the amount of up to £283 million. This will provide Ukrainians with access to vital support in many areas. Victoria Smirnova for Freedom Television Channel.
Russia's attack drones are getting smarter and deadlier. All defense are no longer enough, but Ukraine isn't backing down. Meet the next-generation drone interceptors, machine that can blow up Russian Shaheeds mid-air or for them to crash land. How do they work, and can they really turn the tide in the skies? Reporters take you inside the secret tech of Ukrainians' new aerial defense.
Russia has continued to launch a record number of drones during massive attacks on Ukrainian cities. In response to this enemy tactic, Ukrainian engineers have already developed their own solutions. One of these solutions is interceptor drones, which are capable of effectively shooting down enemy targets and cost hundreds of times less than traditional air defense systems.
Based on a standard unmanned aerial vehicle or UAV, which can either automatically fly to the precise sector where the unauthorized drone is located and then effectively intercept it using an integrated camera system and advanced machine vision capabilities. That is, when it locks onto the target, it tracks and aims at it automatically.
In this footage, you can see one of the finished prototypes of the Ukrainian interceptor drone. It quickly gains altitude, accurately identifies the target, and destroys the enemy UAV before it reaches its intended target. Its main advantage is not only its low cost, but also its ability to operate at any time of day and in challenging weather conditions.
The interceptors operate within a range of 30 to 40 kilometers. It all depends on their mission. So, in general, the destruction of an enemy target is carried out basically by detonating a fragmentation warhead, or by proximity detonation as it approaches the enemy target, or upon impact with the target, the corresponding warhead is triggered.
This type of drone is equipped with artificial intelligence and a camera with infrared sensors. This makes it possible to effectively detect camouflaged so-called black Shaheeds even in the dark.
In our case, we are currently training our artificial intelligence to operate in automatic mode. But in any case, it's important to understand that when we talk about countermeasures, it's crucial, for example, that one operator can simultaneously control 10 interception devices.
The development of interceptor drones began back in 2022. Since then, dozens of different variants have been created, but only now, after thorough testing, have they started to be used in practice.
The main task now is to be able to operate up to 3,000 meters the altitude that the Shahed rises to. And we're talking about kinetic destruction, meaning a direct hit on the drone and detonation, or detonation nearby.
Such drones have already proven themselves successfully in real combat conditions. On the night of Wednesday, the 9th of July, the enemy carried out a record attack, launching over 700 aerial attack assets. Some of them were neutralized specifically by interceptor drones. The main goal for the developers now is to achieve 70% effectiveness in their operation. This will become a key impetus for launching mass production, which is being actively discussed with international partners.
Step by step, we are diligently and systematically closing the significant funding gap for the crucial production of essential drones and advanced drone interceptors, and simultaneously filling Ukrainian production lines with clear, precise, and confirmed orders. We are also actively working in close collaboration with our valued partners to diligently ensure that the vital production in their respective countries operates as much as is practically possible for our collective and joint defense efforts, both in the immediate present and certainly after the conclusion of the war.
There are different models of drone interceptors, but those already carrying out combat missions in the sky cost hundreds of times less than air defense missiles.
It can catch up with enemy UAVs and Shaheeds. The overall cost can typically range anywhere from $800 to $1,200, depending on the specific configuration and chosen features.
However, it should be noted that in any case, the enemy uses a large quantity. And in order for us to be able to independently scale our capabilities and counter such a threat, we need an inexpensive means of destruction.
The developers are making this possible so that shooting down enemy objects is as safe as possible for the civilian population.
And something like a hybrid is being developed, which will either have an electronic warfare device on it, or will deploy, a pneumatic net that will capture this UAV and simply cause it to fall freely, because it will lose its ability to fly.
According to the expert, there are different types of interceptor drones. Some of them do not explode but physically push the enemy drone, disabling it without causing unnecessary destruction. There are also developments underway for much faster drones, capable of catching up with missiles and neutralizing them in flight. Dmytro Shulha, Dmytro Kurchenko, Rada television channel.
Big moves from Washington and Kyiv. The US and Ukraine have signed a major deal to create a joint production line of ammunition chemicals. The plant will be built in the United States, but the goal is crystal clear: fix the critical storage of special chemical components for Ukraine's defense industry. The agreement was signed in Kyiv during the visit of US Presidential envoy Kate Kellogg. What else happened on day first of his trip? Full details inside.
At around 9 o'clock in the morning on the 14th of July, the head of the office of the President of Ukraine posted a video on social media. Andriy Yermak personally welcomed the US Special Representative for Ukraine, Kate Kellogg.
Defense, strengthening security, weapons, sanctions, protecting our people, enhancing cooperation between Ukraine and the USSR are many topics to discuss. Russia does not want to cease fire. Peace through strength is the principle of US President Donald Trump, and we support this approach. Andriy Yermak, head of the office of the President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
Earlier, on the sidelines of the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Rome, Kellogg himself stated that his visit to Kyiv would last a week. At that time, President Volodymyr Zelensky noted that the special representative would be given information about Russia's military capabilities and an assessment of Ukraine's prospects. He assigned the preparation of these materials to the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, and the Chief of the General Staff, Andriy Nato. Kate Kellogg's first official meeting upon arriving in Kyiv was with President Volodymyr Zelensky.
We often have the pleasure of meeting with you and your dedicated team. Thank you and your entire team for coming to Kyiv. Thank you very much. We are grateful to President Trump for all his messages and very strong decisions to resume supplies for us. And we are grateful for the bipartisan support. And of course, we had very good conversations in The Hague with the President, and we had a very good phone call. We made several decisions that are very positive for both countries. And just now, we were talking about air defense with the General.
Later, on his Telegram page, Volodymyr Zelensky clarified what was discussed at the negotiating table.
We discussed the path to peace and what we can actually do together to bring it closer. This includes strengthening air defense for Ukraine, joint production, purchasing defense weapons together with Europe, and of course sanctions against Russia and those who help it. We are counting on the leadership of the United States. After all, it is clear that Moscow will not stop unless its unreasonable ambitions are stopped by force. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
After the meeting with Ukraine's Minister of Defense Rustem Umerov, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces General Oleksandr Syrsky, head of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense Kyrylo Budanov, and other representatives of the country's military leadership, the Ukrainian side informed Kate Kellogg about the situation on the battlefield and Moscow's military plans not only regarding Kyiv, but also a number of NATO member countries.
Special attention was given to the development of joint projects for localizing arms production in Ukraine and Europe. In particular, this concerns air defense systems and other critically important areas. Some of these projects are already being implemented, while others are being prepared for launch. They strengthen not only Ukraine but also our allies. We have unique combat experience, especially in the field of UAVs, and are ready to share it. We also discussed the issue of sanctions. The Russian energy sector is a key source of funding for the war, and it must be consistently and systematically restricted. Rustem Umerov, Minister of Defense of Ukraine, on Telegram.
On the continuation and acceleration of military aid to Ukraine, strengthening sanctions pressure on Russia specifically against banks, the shadow fleet, oil and gas revenues, and the nuclear sector minimizing escape routes, imposing restrictions, and the global threat of Russian aggression to world peace. Closer to the evening of July 14th, Kate Kellogg held talks with Ruslan Stefanchuk. A representative of the Verkhovna Rada wrote about this on social media.
I am grateful for the clear position of the United States in supporting Ukraine and for the signals of readiness for consistent actions that will strengthen our defense and bring a just peace closer. Strong cooperation between Ukraine and the United States is a contribution to the security of all of Europe and the entire democratic world. Ruslan Stefanchuk, chairman of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, Facebook.
Let me remind you, Kate Kellogg's visit to Kyiv is taking place against the backdrop of a shift in Washington's rhetoric regarding Russia's war against Ukraine. On the day the special representative arrived in Kyiv, President Donald Trump announced the transfer of 17 Patriot systems and other weapons necessary to defend against Russian aggression to Ukraine. The head of the White House made this statement during a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. The aid package includes billions of dollars worth of weaponry. The coordination of deliveries will be handled by the North Atlantic Alliance.
Today in Kyiv, we are discussing with Volodymyr Zelensky a landmark agreement between the US President and NATO that will speed up the delivery of the best American-made weapons to Ukraine. Fully funded by the Allies, it accelerates delivery, supports Ukraine's defense, strengthens NATO unity, and underscores its commitment to peace through strength. Keith Kellogg, Special Representative of the US President for Ukraine on social network X.
In addition, US President Donald Trump stated that if Moscow does not agree to come to the negotiating table within 50 days, Washington will impose secondary sanctions on its trading partners. Larisa Petruk for Freedom Television Channel.
The future is already here and it's saving lives on the front line. Ukraine's armed forces are now using robotic ground systems that deliver ammunition and evacuate the wounded right from the heat of the battle. These machines operate in the most dangerous zone, under fire, across minefields and through rubble, where every second counts. How do these battlefield robots work? What mission can they handle? And how are they reshaping the way Ukrainians fight? Full report coming up.
These shots were filmed right on the front line. The ground robot is heading out on a mission, delivering a package to the soldiers.
To deliver certain supplies there for setting up positions and also some ammunition.
On the way back, the robot has another, no less important task: retrieve a fallen soldier from the battlefield. The evacuation team can't get there, it's too dangerous.
We have successfully loaded up the machine for our esteemed comrades. Now, the entire cargo has been completely unloaded.
In the same way, the UGV managed to evacuate a wounded soldier.
Not without problems, of course, but they were delivered to the destination.
The operation was carefully planned. The robot managed to cover 10 kilometers.
We spent 3 days planning and working out our routes and reference points for where our UGV could go.
The ground robot was operated by an operator using the camera on the system itself, as well as with the help of an aerial drone.
The UAV group acted as a relay, launching a Mavic. And so, in the end, we went and carried out this operation.
The main difficulties in using UGVs at the front are enemy electronic warfare systems, which try to disrupt the connection between the machine and the operator. In addition, it is immediately targeted for attack.
They fire mortars at it or something else, so you have to take into account that you need to drive around all these, let's say when there are impacts, craters appear and you have to avoid them.
Controlling a ground drone is not too difficult, the soldiers say. However, it is a very responsible task.
Well, there are certain nuances, but basically, roughly speaking, you can learn to operate it not even in a day, but in just a few hours. It's all quite simple. You need to know the route you're taking very well and be able to set up the connection properly.
And it's precisely these kinds of vehicles that are often the only means to deliver ammunition to the front line or evacuate a wounded person. Moreover, it saves the lives of those involved in the evacuation as well.
In order to pick someone up with a pickup truck, we need at least 2 servicemen and to arrive in the pickup. That would be a destroyed pickup. That would immediately mean the loss of servicemen. But this way, the drone goes by itself.
And in the armed forces of Ukraine, they are now actively working on implementing ground robotic systems on the battlefield. By the way, most of them are produced in Ukraine.
I am convinced that in the ground component, in the component of ground robotic complexes, we are outpacing our enemy. Our mission is to preserve the life and health of the infantrymen on the front line of our combat formations.
And Ukraine itself will continue to develop this direction so that workers can perform extremely dangerous tasks to the maximum. Vladislav Palivoda, We Are Ukraine. Marathon. The only news.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. If you want us to keep telling the truth, bringing you the stories that matters and standing up for Ukraine's voice, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment and consider becoming a channel sponsor. Your support helps us do more, reach more and stay strong. Stay strong, stay informed and stay with Ukraine.